The sky over Seoul burned orange and black. Smoke rose from broken buildings, like fingers reaching toward the heavens. The great city that once held millions now lay in ruins, and the sounds of war had finally stopped. Not because humanity had won, but because there was nothing left to fight for. Kang Do-hyun stood in the rubble of what used to be a military command center. His uniform was torn and covered in dust and blood. Some of the blood was his own. Most of it belonged to others. Around him, the bodies of his soldiers lay scattered like fallen leaves. They had fought well. They had fought until the very end. But it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. The Valoran ships hung in the sky like massive steel clouds. They had appeared 3 months ago, coming from beyond the stars. At first, the nations of Earth had tried to communicate with them. They sent messages of peace. They offered friendship. The Valorans answered with fire. Their weapons cut through human armies like hot knives through butter. Their shields laughed at nuclear missiles. Their soldiers, tall and powerful, with skin the color of pale silver, moved faster and hit harder than any human could match. In 3 months, they had conquered the entire planet. Every government had surrendered. Every military had been destroyed. Only small groups of resistance fighters remained, hiding in the shadows and dying one by one. Do-hyun's group had been the last organized resistance in all of Asia. 200 soldiers fighting against an empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds. It was madness. It was suicide. But they had fought anyway. Because that was what humans did. They fought even when there was no hope. Now it was over. Do-hyun heard the sound of Valoran boots crunching over broken concrete. He did not run. There was nowhere to run. He did not hide. There was nowhere to hide. He simply stood there watching as 50 Valoran soldiers surrounded him with their weapons raised. One of them, an officer with golden markings on his armor, stepped forward. He looked at Do-hyun with eyes that held no emotion, no respect, nothing but cold duty. "You are the commander," the officer said. His voice was flat and mechanical through his translator. "You will come with us. The Empress wishes to see you." Do-hyun said nothing. He let them take his weapons. He let them bind his hands. He walked with them toward the waiting transport ship, stepping over the bodies of his friends and soldiers without looking down. If he looked down, he might break. And he had decided that he would not break. Not today. Not ever. The transport ship carried him up through the orange sky, through the layers of smoke and ash, until they reached the massive flagship that orbited Earth like a second moon. The ship was called the Crimson Throne, and it was the personal vessel of Empress Yeren, supreme ruler of the Valoran Empire. Do-hyun had learned much about the Valorans during the 3 months of war. They were a warrior species, bred for combat over thousands of years. They believed in strength above all else. They believed that the strong had the right to rule the weak, and that conquered peoples should be grateful for the chance to serve their betters. They had never lost a war. They had never met a species that could stand against them. Until now, Do-hyun thought, until they met humans. We lost the war, but we made them pay for every inch of ground. We made them remember us. The guards brought him through the endless corridors of the Crimson Throne. Valoran soldiers and officers stopped to stare at him as he passed. He could see the contempt in their silver eyes. To them, he was nothing but an insect, a creature from a primitive world who had dared to resist his betters. Do-hyun kept his head high. He met their stares without flinching. He was a prisoner, yes. He was defeated, yes. But he was not broken. Finally, they reached the throne room. It was a vast chamber, larger than any stadium on Earth. The walls were made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Banners hung from the ceiling, each one representing a world that had fallen to the Valoran Empire. Do-hyun counted them quickly. There were over 100. At the far end of the chamber, on a throne made of black crystal, sat Empress Yeren. She was tall, even for a Valoran. Her skin was the same pale silver as her people, but her eyes were different. They were deep purple, the color of a dying star. She wore armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal, and a crown of sharp black spikes rested on her head. Everything about her spoke of power and death. Do-hyun was brought before her and forced to his knees. The guard stepped back, leaving him alone in the center of the vast room. The Empress looked down at him like a cat looking at a mouse. So, she said, her voice was surprisingly soft, almost musical. This is the last commander of the human resistance, the one who killed 300 of my soldiers, the one who destroyed 4 of my ships. Do-yun said nothing. Yeren tilted her head slightly. You do not beg. You do not plead for your life? Every other species does when they are brought before me. They cry and grovel and promise to serve. They offer me information about their people. They sell their honor for a few more moments of breath. Still, Do-hyun remained silent. He simply looked at her with calm, steady eyes. Something flickered across Yeren's face. It might have been surprise. It might have been curiosity. It was hard to tell with her alien features. Interesting, she said. Very interesting. Perhaps you humans are more amusing than I thought. She waved her hand lazily. Take him to the arena cells. I will deal with him later. Let him watch his fellow humans die in the games. Perhaps then he will learn the proper way to address his empress. The guards grabbed Do-hyun and dragged him away. As he was pulled through the doors, he took one last look at the empress sitting on her throne of darkness. She expected him to break. She expected him to beg. She expected him to become just another conquered creature crawling at her feet. She was wrong. Do-hyun had a plan. It was a mad plan. It was probably a suicidal plan. But it was a plan. And as long as he was breathing, he would see it through. The Valorans thought they understood humans. They thought they knew everything about the small, weak creatures from the little blue planet. They knew nothing. And Kang Do-hyun was going to teach them. The arena cells were dark and cold. They were carved deep into the belly of the Crimson Throne, far from the light of any star. The walls were made of thick metal that hummed with energy, and the air smelled of blood and despair. Do-hyun was thrown into a cell with 6 other humans. They sat in the corners like broken dolls, their eyes empty and their spirits crushed. When the guards slammed the door shut, none of them even looked up. For a long moment, Do-hyun simply stood there, studying his fellow prisoners. There were 4 men and 2 women. They were thin and covered in bruises and cuts. Their clothes were rags. They had been here for weeks, maybe longer. They will kill us tomorrow, one of the men said. His voice was hollow, like wind through dead trees. In the arena, for the entertainment of the Valorans, they make us fight against monsters from other worlds. No one survives. Do-hyun sat down against the wall. What are your names? The prisoners looked at him with confusion. It was such a simple question, such a human question. In this place of death, it seemed almost foolish to ask, but slowly, one by one, they answered. My name is Ji-hoon, said the hollow-voiced man. I was a teacher before the invasion. Minji, said one of the women. I was a nurse. Sunho, said another man. Factory worker. Yunji, said the second woman. Student. I was going to be a doctor. The last 2 men were brothers named Wonjun and Hyunwoo. They had been soldiers like Do-hyun, captured in the early days of the war. Do-hyun listened to their stories. He heard about their families, their homes, their dreams. He heard about the day the Valorans came and destroyed everything they loved. He heard about the friends they had watched die in the arena. Why do you ask these things? Ji-hoon said finally. Why do you want to know about us? We are dead already. Tomorrow or the day after, we will all be dead. Do-hyun shook his head. No, you are not dead yet. As long as your heart beats, you are alive. And as long as you are alive, you can fight. Fight? Sunho laughed bitterly. Fight against what? We are weak. We are small. We are nothing against them. That is what they want you to believe, Do-hyun said. They want you to feel small. They want you to feel hopeless. Because hopeless people do not resist. Hopeless people are easy to control. He leaned forward, and there was fire in his eyes. But hope is not something they can take from you. Hope is something you choose to keep. And I choose to keep mine. The prisoners looked at him like he was mad. Maybe he was, but madness was better than despair. That night, Do-hyun did not sleep. He sat in the darkness, thinking and planning. Through the walls, he could hear the distant roar of the arena crowd. Someone was dying up there, fighting for the amusement of the Valorans. Tomorrow it might be him, but Do-hyun was not thinking about dying. He was thinking about living. More importantly, he was thinking about Empress Yeren. He had watched her carefully during their brief meeting. He had studied the way she sat, the way she spoke, the way she moved her hands. He had seen the pride in her purple eyes, the absolute certainty that she was superior to all other beings in the universe. That pride was a weakness. That certainty was a crack in her armor. The Valorans had laws. Do-Yun had learned about them during the war, from captured data and intercepted communications. One of those laws was ancient, older than the Empire itself. It was called the Law of Challenge. Any warrior could challenge another warrior to single combat. It did not matter how high or how low they were. If the challenge was made according to the proper forms, it could not be refused without dishonor. And dishonor to a Valoran was worse than death. It was a crazy idea. It was probably impossible. But it was an idea, and Do-Yun held on to it like a drowning man holds onto a rope. The next day, guards came to take Yunji to the arena. She screamed and cried and begged for mercy. The guards laughed and dragged her away. Do-Yun tried to stop them, but he was beaten down with electric rods. He lay on the cold floor, his body twitching with pain as the sounds of the arena drifted down through the walls. The crowd cheered. Then they screamed with excitement. Then there was silence. Yunji did not return. That night, Minji wept in the corner. Ji-hoon stared at the wall with dead eyes. The brothers held each other in silence. Do-Hyun sat apart from them, his jaw tight with anger. But his mind was clear. His plan was still forming. "I am going to kill the Empress," he said quietly. The others looked at him with shock. "You are insane," Wonjin whispered. "She is the greatest warrior in the Empire. She has killed thousands in single combat. She cannot be defeated." "Everyone can be defeated," Do-Hyun said. "Everyone has a weakness. I just need to find hers." "And how will you even get close to her?" Hyunwoo asked. "You are a prisoner, a slave. She will never fight you." Do-Hyun smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. "She will fight me," he said, "because I will not give her any other choice." Over the next few days, Do-Hyun watched everything. He watched the guards who brought their food. He watched the patterns of light that came through the small window. He watched the other prisoners being taken to the arena, one by one. He also watched the recordings that played on the small screen in their cell. The Valorans liked to broadcast the arena fights throughout the ship so that everyone could see the power of the Empire. Do-Yun watched every fight carefully, studying the way the Valoran warriors moved, the techniques they used, the weapons they preferred. And sometimes, Empress Yeren herself would appear in the arena to execute a particularly important prisoner. Do-Yun watched these recordings most carefully of all. He noticed that she fought with absolute confidence. She never hesitated. She never defended. She simply attacked over and over, trusting that her speed and strength would overwhelm any opponent. But there were moments, small moments, when her attacks created openings. Tiny gaps in her defense that lasted less than a second. A human could never exploit those openings. A human was too slow, too weak, or so the Valorans believed. Do-Yun had been trained by the best martial artists on Earth. He had spent 20 years learning how to read opponents, how to predict their movements, how to find the pattern in chaos. Humans could not match Valorans' speed or strength. But humans had something the Valorans did not understand. Humans could learn. Humans could adapt. Humans could see patterns that others could not see. And Kang Do-Yun was very, very good at seeing patterns. When the guards finally came for him, he was ready. "The Empress wants to make an example of you," the lead guard said with a cruel smile. "The whole fleet will be watching. Any last words, human?" Do-Yun stood up calmly. He looked at the guard with steady eyes. "Yes," he said. "Tell the Empress that I have something interesting to say. Something she will want to hear." The guard laughed and grabbed his arm. Do-Hyun did not resist. He walked with them toward the arena, toward his fate, toward the moment that would change everything. Behind him in the cell, Ji-hoon and the others watched him go. And for the first time in weeks, they felt something other than despair. They felt hope. The arena was vast beyond anything Do-Hyun had imagined. It stretched out before him like a sea of sand and stone, surrounded by towering walls of black metal. Above the walls, rising up into the darkness, sat 10,000 Valoran soldiers and officers. Their silver faces gleamed in the harsh lights, and their purple eyes watched him like predators watching prey. Giant screens floated in the air above the arena, showing his image to the entire crowd. He knew that these screens were connected to every ship in the Valoran fleet. He knew that this broadcast was being sent to every corner of the conquered Earth. Millions of humans would be watching. Billions of Valorans would be watching. Good, Doyen thought. Let them all see. He was brought to the center of the arena and forced to his knees in the sand. His hands were still bound behind his back. His body still ached from the beatings he had received in the cells. But his mind was clear, and his heart was steady. A great horn sounded, deep and low, shaking the very air. The crowd fell silent, and then she appeared. Empress Yeren descended from above on a platform of floating light. Her black armor gleamed like polished obsidian. Her crown of dark spikes cast shadows across her pale face. In her hand, she carried a sword that seemed to drink the light around it. This was the Blade of Ancestors, the legendary weapon that had been carried by Valoran rulers for 5,000 years. She stepped off the platform and walked toward Do-hyun with slow, deliberate steps. Her purple eyes were fixed on him, and there was a small smile on her lips, the smile of a hunter who has cornered its prey. "Commander Kang Do-hyun," she said, her voice echoing through the arena. "Last leader of the human resistance, you have killed many of my soldiers. You have destroyed my ships. You have caused more trouble than any single human in history." She stopped in front of him, looking down at his kneeling form. "For this you will die. But first I offer you the traditional choice given to all defeated commanders." She raised the Blade of Ancestors, letting its dark edge catch the light. "You may beg for a quick death, and I will grant it. One clean stroke, and your suffering will end. Or you may refuse, and you will be thrown to the beasts. They will tear you apart slowly, piece by piece, while the galaxy watches." She waited, that small smile still playing on her lips. She had done this 1,000 times before. She knew exactly how it would go. The human would cry. The human would beg. The human would crawl at her feet and plead for mercy. They always did. Do-hyun looked up at her. His face was calm, his eyes were steady. He did not cry. He did not beg. He did not plead. Instead, he spoke. "I have a third option." A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. Yaren's smile flickered. This was not how it was supposed to go. "There is no third option," she said. "These are the only choices." "According to the law of challenge," Do-hyun said, his voice clear and strong, "any warrior may challenge another warrior to single combat. It does not matter their rank. It does not matter their species. The challenge cannot be refused without dishonor." The silence in the arena was absolute. 10,000 Valorans stared at the kneeling human as if he had grown a second head. Yaren's eyes widened. Then they narrowed dangerously. "You dare," she whispered. "I challenge you, Empress Yeren, to single combat," Do-hyun said. "By the ancient law of your people, by the blood of your ancestors, I challenge you." For a long moment, nothing happened. The crowd was frozen in shock. No one had ever challenged the Empress. No one would ever be foolish enough to try. She was the greatest warrior in the Empire. She had killed gods and monsters and armies. A single human was less than nothing to her, and yet the law was clear. General Taiho, who stood at the edge of the arena, stepped forward. "Empress, this is madness. The law was not written for situations like this. Let me kill him for his insolence." Yeren raised her hand, silencing him. She was staring at Do-hyun with an expression he could not read. Her purple eyes seemed to glow with inner fire. When she spoke, her voice was soft, almost curious. "You know you cannot win. You know I will kill you. Why do you do this?" "Because I would rather die fighting than die begging," Do-hyun said. "Because my people are watching, and I want them to see that even in defeat, we do not kneel. Because you have taken everything from us, but you cannot take our pride." Something changed in Yaren's face. The cruel amusement faded, replaced by something else. Something that might have been respect. "You are a fool," she said. "Maybe," Do-hyun replied, "but I am a fool who knows your law. And the law says you cannot refuse." Yeren turned to look at General Taiho, then at the crowd of watching soldiers, then at the screens that broadcast her image across the galaxy. She was trapped. If she refused, she would be dishonored. A Valoran ruler who broke the ancient laws was no ruler at all. Her own people would turn against her. The conquered species would see her weakness. But if she accepted, she would have to fight a human, a primitive creature from a backward world. Even if she won easily, even if she crushed him in seconds, the mere fact that she had been challenged by such a creature would be humiliating. Do-hyun had put her in an impossible position, and he had done it on purpose. The crowd waited. The galaxy waited. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Empress Yeren laughed. It was a strange sound, high and clear, echoing through the silent arena. "Very well, human," she said. "You want to die fighting? Then you shall have your wish. I accept your challenge." The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Some screamed with anger. Some simply stared in disbelief. General Taiho rushed forward. "Empress, please reconsider. This is beneath you. Let me fight in your place. The law allows—" "The law allows," Yeren cut him off. "But I do not wish it. This human has shown more courage than any creature I have faced in 1,000 years. He deserves to die by my hand, not the hand of a substitute." She looked down at Do-hyun, and there was fire in her purple eyes. "One day," she said. "You have one day to prepare. Choose any weapon you wish, any armor, any equipment. It will not save you, but I want you to have every possible advantage. I want the galaxy to see that even at your best, you are nothing compared to me." She turned and walked back to her floating platform. As she rose into the air, she called down one last time. "Tomorrow, human. Tomorrow you die." The platform carried her away, and the guards came to take Do-hyun back to his cell. As he was dragged across the sand, he heard the crowd still buzzing with shock and confusion. He had done it. He had achieved the impossible. He had forced the Empress of the Valoran Empire to accept his challenge. Now he just had to survive the fight. And that was going to be the hard part. The news spread through the Crimson Throne like wildfire. A human had challenged the Empress. A weak, primitive creature from a conquered world had dared to invoke the law of challenge against the greatest warrior in the galaxy. Some Valorans thought it was a joke. Some thought it was an insult. Some thought it was the bravest thing they had ever seen. In her private chambers, Empress Yeren sat alone, staring at the stars through the massive windows. General Taiho stood behind her, his voice tight with worry. "Empress, I beg you to reconsider. Let a champion fight in your place. The law allows it. There is no dishonor in—" "There is dishonor in hiding behind others," Yeren said quietly. "I have killed 1,000 enemies in single combat. I have never used a champion. I will not start now." "But he is human," Taiho said. "He is nothing. Fighting him yourself gives him importance he does not deserve." Yeren turned to look at him. Her purple eyes were thoughtful, distant. "You did not see his eyes, Taiho. In the arena, when everyone else would have begged for their lives, he looked at me like an equal. No one has looked at me that way in centuries. No one has had the courage." She turned back to the stars. "I am curious about this human. I want to understand what makes him different. And the only way to understand a warrior is to fight him." Taiho bowed his head in defeat. He had served the Empress for 300 years. He knew when her mind was made up. "As you wish, Empress. But please be careful. There is something strange about this one." Yeren smiled. "I know. That is what makes it interesting." In the arena cells, Do-hyun was receiving visitors of a different kind. A team of Valoran technicians had arrived with cases full of weapons and armor. "The Empress has ordered us to give you whatever you need," the lead technician said. He did not look happy about it. "Our best blades, our strongest armor, our most advanced shields. Choose anything." He opened the cases, revealing a treasure of deadly equipment. Swords that could cut through starship hulls, armor that could stop plasma bolts, shields that generated energy fields. Do-hyun looked at it all. Then he shook his head. "No." The technician stared at him. "What do you mean, no?" "I do not want any of it. I want a knife, a simple steel knife, and loose clothing, nothing else." The technician's mouth fell open. "Are you insane? The Empress carries the blade of ancestors. It has killed more warriors than any weapon in history. And you want to fight her with a steel knife?" "Yes. Human, the Empress moves 3 times faster than you. She is 10 times stronger. Her armor is molecularly bonded. A steel knife will not even scratch her. Then I will have to aim for the places without armor, Do-hyun said calmly. The technician threw up his hands and left, muttering about suicidal primitives. An hour later, a guard returned with a simple steel knife in a set of plain cloth clothing. Ji-hoon and the other prisoners watched as Do-hyun examined the knife, testing its balance and weight. You really are going to fight her, Ji-hoon said. It was not a question. Yes. With that? Yes. Why? You could have chosen weapons that might actually hurt her, armor that might protect you. Why fight with nothing? Do-hyun set the knife down and looked at his fellow prisoners. Because that is not how humans fight, he said. The Valorans think strength is everything. They think the warrior with the best weapons and the best armor always wins. But they are wrong. He picked up the knife again, letting it spin through his fingers with practiced ease. Humans did not become the dominant species on Earth because we were the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we learned to think. We learned to adapt. We learned to find the weakness in every enemy, no matter how powerful. And what is the Empress's weakness? Minji asked. Do-hyun smiled. She has never lost. She has never even been challenged. She expects every fight to be easy. That expectation is her weakness. That night, Commander Sujin came to visit him. She was a middle-ranked officer in the Valoran military, and she had been assigned to oversee the arena cells. Unlike most Valorans, she did not look at Do-hyun with contempt or hatred. She looked at him with curiosity. You are the human who challenged the Empress, she said, standing outside his cell. I am. Why did you do it? You must know you cannot win. Do-hyun stood up and walked to the bars. He was shorter than her, as all humans were shorter than Valorans. But he met her eyes without flinching. Your people have conquered 1,000 worlds, he said. You have never met a species that could stand against you. But you have never met humans before. You do not understand how we fight. And how is that? Like we have nothing to lose. Sujin tilted her head, considering his words. That is not a strategy. That is desperation. No, Do-hyun said. Desperation is when you fight because you are afraid to die. I am not desperate. I am not afraid. I know exactly what I am doing, and I know exactly why I am doing it. Then explain it to me. I want to understand. Do-hyun was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but intense. Tomorrow, millions of humans will be watching. They have seen their armies destroyed. They have seen their leaders surrender. They have seen their world conquered. They have lost everything, and they have given up hope. He gripped the bars of his cell. But tomorrow they will see something different. They will see one of their own stand up to the most powerful being in the galaxy. They will see him fight without fear. And even if he loses, even if he dies, they will know that it is possible to resist. They will know that they do not have to kneel. He looked into Sujin's silver eyes. That is worth dying for. That is worth everything. Sujin stared at him for a long time. There was something in his eyes that she had never seen before. Not defiance, not anger, something deeper, something that made her uncomfortable in a way she could not explain. You are strange, human, she said finally. My name is Do-hyun. She nodded slowly. You are strange, Do-hyun. I hope your death is quick. She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the dark corridor. Do-hyun returned to his corner of the cell. He sat down, closed his eyes, and began to breathe slowly and deeply. In his mind, he replayed every recording he had seen of the Empress fighting. He studied her movements, her patterns, her habits. He looked for the gaps in her attacks. He memorized the rhythm of her strikes. He would only get one chance, one moment when everything would depend on a single move. He had to be ready. Outside the cell, in the corridors of the Crimson Throne, Sujin walked slowly back to her quarters. She could not stop thinking about the human's words. Like we have nothing to lose. It was such a strange concept. The Valorans always had something to lose. Their honor, their rank, their lives. Every fight was calculated, measured, controlled. But the humans did not fight that way. The humans fought like they were already dead. And that, Sujin realized with a chill, made them very dangerous indeed. Tomorrow would be interesting. Tomorrow would change everything. The arena was packed beyond its capacity. Every seat was filled. Soldiers stood in the aisles. Officers crowded the balconies. In the history of the Valorant Empire, no single event had ever drawn such attention. On Earth, humans gathered around every screen they could find, in the ruins of cities and hidden underground shelters, in the camps where the conquered were held. People watched with breath held tight. They did not know who this man was. They did not know why he had challenged the Empress. But they knew that one of their own was about to face the most powerful being in the galaxy. In the royal box above the arena, General Taiho stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His face was stone, but his heart was troubled. Something about this felt wrong. The human was too calm, too confident. It made no sense. The great horn sounded, and the crowd fell silent. Two figures walked onto the sand from opposite ends of the arena. From one side came Empress Yeren. She wore her legendary black armor, polished to a mirror shine. The crown of dark spikes sat upon her head like a halo of shadows. In her hand, she carried the blade of ancestors, its dark metal gleaming with hunger. From the other side came Dohyun. He wore simple cloth clothing, loose and light. In his right hand, he held a single steel knife. Nothing else. No armor, no shield. No hope, the Valorants thought. The crowd murmured as they saw him. Some laughed. Some shook their heads in pity. This would not be a fight. This would be an execution. The two combatants walked toward each other until they stood 20 paces apart. Yeren looked at Dohyun with her burning purple eyes. Dohyun looked back at her with eyes of quiet stone. "Last chance, human," Yeren said. Her voice carried across the arena. "Kneel now, and I will make your death quick. Fight, and I will make it slow." Dohyun did not kneel. He did not speak. He simply raised his knife into a ready position. Yeren smiled. It was the smile of a predator about to feast. The signal horn sounded. Yeren moved. She was fast, faster than anything Dohyun had ever seen. One moment she was 20 paces away. The next moment she was right in front of him, the blade of ancestors sweeping toward his neck in a killing arc. But Dohyun was not there. He had seen her body tense before she moved. He had read the direction in her eyes. In the half-second it took her to cross the distance, he had already stepped to the side, turning his body just enough to let the blade pass by. The knife flashed. A thin line of violet blood appeared on Yeren's cheek. The crowd went absolutely silent. Yeren stopped. She raised her hand to her face, touching the blood. She stared at her purple-stained fingers with an expression of pure disbelief. She had been cut. A human had cut her. In front of her entire fleet, her eyes snapped to Dohyun, and for the first time, there was no amusement in them. There was only cold, killing rage. "Interesting," she hissed. She attacked again. This time she was faster. This time she was more careful. Her blade danced through the air in a storm of strikes, each one capable of cutting through steel, each one aimed at a vital point. Dohyun did not try to block. He did not try to match her strength. He simply moved. He flowed around her attacks like water around stones. He bent and twisted and spun, always moving, never stopping, never giving her a clean target. Every time she committed to a strike, he was already somewhere else. Every time she thought she had him, he slipped away. And every now and then, when she overextended, when she left the smallest gap in her defense, his knife would flash out. A cut on her arm, a slice on her thigh, a nick on her hand. None of the wounds were deep. None of them were dangerous. But they were wounds. The Empress was bleeding. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This was impossible. This could not be happening. The Empress was the greatest warrior in the Empire. She had killed thousands without receiving a single scratch. And now a human, a primitive creature with a steel knife, was making her bleed. General Taiho gripped the railing of the royal box so hard that the metal bent under his fingers. His mind raced, trying to understand what he was seeing. The human was not faster than the Empress. He was not stronger. By every measure, he should have been dead in the first second. But he was not fighting like a Valorant. He was not trying to overpower his opponent or outlast her. He was fighting like a ghost, like a shadow, like smoke in the wind. He was fighting like a human. On Earth, the Watchers began to murmur. In the camps, prisoners who had given up hope leaned forward, their eyes wide. In the hidden shelters, resistance fighters clenched their fists. They could not believe what they were seeing. One of their own was fighting the Empress. and he was not losing. In the arena, Yaren stepped back, breathing hard. Her black armor was marked with lines of violet blood. Her face was twisted with fury and confusion. "How are you doing this?" she demanded. "You are weak. You are slow. You are nothing. How are you still alive?" Doyun circled her slowly, his knife held ready. He was breathing hard too. His body ached from the constant movement. Several of her attacks had grazed him, leaving long cuts on his arms and sides. Blood soaked through his cloth clothing. But his eyes were clear, and his voice was steady. "You fight with strength," he said. "You fight with speed. You fight with power. That is all you know. That is all your people have ever needed to know." He shifted his stance, moving to her left, then quickly to her right, making her turn. "But humans do not fight with strength. We cannot. We have never been the strongest or the fastest. We survive by thinking, by watching, by learning." He stopped moving and looked directly into her purple eyes. "I have been watching you since the moment I was captured. I have studied every recording of your fights. I know how you move. I know how you think. I know what you will do before you do it." Yaren's eyes widened. "That is impossible. No one can predict me." "Everyone follows patterns," Do-hyun said. "Everyone has habits. The difference is that humans are very, very good at seeing those patterns. We had to be. On our world, everything was trying to kill us. We survived by learning to predict danger before it came." He raised his knife again. "You have never lost because you have never faced anyone who could read you? Until now." Yaren screamed with rage and attacked again. Her strikes were wild now, driven by anger instead of skill. She was done playing. She was done being careful. She wanted this human dead. But anger made her sloppy. Anger made her predictable. Doyun saw the pattern in her attacks. He saw the rhythm in her rage. And he danced through it, slipping past her blade again and again, leaving new cuts with each pass. The fight stretched on. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. The crowd, which had expected the human to die in seconds, watched in shocked silence as the impossible continued. Yaren was slowing. She was not used to fights that lasted this long. Her armor was heavy. Her muscles were burning. Sweat dripped down her silver face, mixing with the blood from a dozen small wounds. And still the human moved. Still the human fought. Still the human refused to die. General Taiho's hands shook as he watched. He finally understood what was happening. The human was not trying to kill the Empress with his knife. The wounds were too small, too shallow. He was trying to exhaust her. He was trying to make her angry and sloppy. He was fighting a battle of endurance and patience, not a battle of strength. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. And it was working. The fate of the galaxy hung on every move, every step, every breath. And Kang Do-yun was still standing. The duel had now lasted more than an hour. No one in the arena could believe it. No one watching on the screens across the galaxy could believe it. This was not possible. This was not how the universe worked. And yet, it was happening. Empress Yaren stood in the center of the arena, her chest heaving with exhaustion. Her black armor, once so perfect and terrifying, was now covered with cuts and dents. Violet blood dripped from dozens of small wounds, staining the sand beneath her feet. Her purple eyes, once so cold and confident, now burned with frustration and something else. Fear. She would not admit it. She could not admit it. But deep in her heart, in a place she had forgotten existed, she was afraid. Not of death. She had faced death many times. She was afraid of something worse. She was afraid of losing. Across from her, Do-yun was in bad shape. His cloth clothing hung in bloody ribbons. His left arm hung useless at his side, broken by a glancing blow that had come too close to dodge completely. Blood streamed down his face from a cut on his forehead, and his breathing was ragged and painful. But he was still standing. His knife was still in his hand. His eyes were still clear and focused. He was still fighting. Yaren attacked again. She was slower now, tired in a way she had never been tired before. But she was still faster than any human, still stronger than any creature Do-yun had ever faced. Her blade swept toward his chest. He twisted away, but not fast enough. The edge caught him across the ribs, cutting deep. He staggered, nearly falling, but somehow kept his feet. His knife lashed out in response, opening a new cut on her sword arm. The blade of ancestors wavered in her grip. They separated, both gasping for air. "Why will you not die?" Yaren whispered. Her voice was hoarse, exhausted. "You are broken. You are bleeding. You cannot win. Why do you keep fighting?" Doyun smiled through the blood on his face. It was not a mocking smile. It was almost gentle. "Because this is what humans do," he said. "We fight when we cannot win. We stand when we cannot stand. We refuse to give up, even when giving up is the only logical choice." He coughed and blood came with it. His broken arm throbbed with pain. His vision was starting to blur at the edges, but he did not stop. "Your people conquered 1,000 worlds because they were all logical," he continued. "They saw that they could not win, so they surrendered. They calculated the odds and they gave up." He raised his knife with his one good arm. "Humans do not calculate odds. We are stubborn. We are crazy. We would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. And that is something your empire has never faced before." Yaren stared at him. In her 3,000 years of life, she had never met anyone like this. She had never even imagined that someone like this could exist. He was weak. He was broken. By every measure, he should have fallen long ago. And yet he stood there, defying her, defying the entire Valoran Empire, with nothing but a steel knife and an unbreakable will. Something stirred in her heart, something she had not felt in centuries. Respect. She pushed it down. She could not afford to respect him. She could not afford to see him as anything other than an enemy to be destroyed. If she let herself respect him, if she let herself see him as an equal, then everything she believed would crumble. She attacked. This time she did not hold back. This time she used every bit of speed and strength she had left. Her blade became a blur, striking from angles that no eye could follow, with force that could split mountains. Doyun moved to dodge, but his body was too broken. He was too slow. The flat of her blade caught him in the chest, and he flew backward, crashing into the sand with a sound like breaking branches. He lay there, unmoving. The crowd erupted in cheers. Finally it was over. The human had put up an impressive fight, better than anyone could have imagined, but in the end, the Empress had won, as she always won. As she would always win. Yaren walked toward his fallen body, the blade of ancestors raised for the killing blow. She stood over him, looking down at his broken form. "It is over," she said. "You fought well, human, better than anyone in history. But in the end, strength wins. It always wins." She raised the blade, and Do-Hyun opened his eyes. His hand shot up, grabbing her wrist. His grip was weak, barely enough to feel. But it stopped her for just a moment, just long enough for him to speak. "Look," he whispered. Yaren looked up at the screens, at the images being broadcast across the galaxy. She saw Earth. She saw millions of humans watching, and in their eyes she did not see defeat. She did not see despair. She saw fire. She saw hope. "You can kill me," Do-Hyun said. His voice was barely a whisper now. "But it is already too late. They have seen that you can bleed. They have seen that you can be hurt. They have seen that one human with a knife can fight the greatest warrior in the galaxy for an hour." He smiled, and there was blood on his teeth. "You have won the battle, Empress, but you have lost so much more." Yaren's hand trembled. She looked at the screens again, at the faces of the humans watching. She saw what Do-Hyun saw. She saw the change in their eyes. They were not afraid anymore. They were not hopeless anymore. They had watched one of their own stand against the invincible, and they had seen that the invincible was not so invincible after all. In camps across Earth, prisoners were rising to their feet. In hidden shelters, resistance fighters were checking their weapons. In the ruins of cities, survivors who had given up were finding their courage again. The human was right. It was already too late. Yaren lowered her blade. She looked down at Do-Hyun, lying broken in the sand, and she felt something she had never felt before. She felt doubt. "Yield," she said quietly, so quietly that only he could hear. "Yield, and I will spare your world. I will withdraw my forces. I will leave your people in peace. Just yield." Do-Yun looked up at her with eyes that saw right through her. You would do that? You would give up everything you have conquered just because of one fight? I would do it because you have shown me something new, Yeren said. Something I did not think was possible. I would do it because you have earned my respect. Do-Yun was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, painfully, he began to push himself up from the sand. His broken arms screamed with pain. His wounded body begged him to stop, but he did not stop. He got to his knees, then to his feet. He stood there swaying, barely conscious, but standing. No, he said. Yeren stared at him in disbelief. No? I am offering you everything you wanted. I am offering you victory. You are offering me a gift, Do-Hyun said, and that is not the same as earning it. My people need to see that they can win, not be given mercy, not be spared by the kindness of their conquerors. They need to see that they can fight for themselves and win. He raised his knife one more time. So we finish this. One way or another. We finish this. Yeren looked at him, broken, bleeding, barely able to stand, and still defiant, still refusing to surrender. You truly are insane, she said. Yes, Do-Hyun agreed. All humans are. And despite everything, Yeren smiled. The fight was not over yet. They faced each other for the last time. Empress Yeren, covered in wounds, exhausted beyond anything she had ever known, but still standing. Kang Do-Hyun, broken and bleeding, barely conscious, but still holding his knife. The crowd had gone silent. 10,000 Valorans watched without breathing. On Earth, millions of humans leaned toward their screens. Across the conquered galaxy, countless eyes from 100 different species watched the two figures standing alone in the sand. This was the moment. This was the end. They moved at the same time. Yeren lunged forward, the blade of ancestors sweeping in a final desperate arc. Do-Hyun stepped into her attack, ignoring the pain, ignoring the danger, closing the distance between them. Metal met metal. There was a sound like thunder, and then silence. Yeren stood frozen, her blade stopped inches from Do-Hyun's neck. Do-Hyun's knife was pressed against her throat, just below her chin, drawing a thin line of violet blood. Neither of them moved. Neither of them could move. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, purple eyes meeting brown eyes. Two warriors from two different worlds, locked in a moment that neither could break. Then slowly, Yeren's legs buckled. She fell to her knees in the sand, the blade of ancestors slipping from her fingers. Do-Hyun swayed, his vision going dark, and collapsed beside her. They lay there side by side, as the crowd watched in stunned silence. It was a draw. No winner, no loser. Both combatants had fallen at the same moment, neither able to claim victory. By the ancient laws of the Valorant Empire, a draw meant that both warriors had proven their honor. It meant that neither was superior to the other. It meant that they were equals. Equals. A human was the equal of the Empress. General Taeho rushed onto the arena floor with a team of medics. He knelt beside Yeren, checking her wounds, calling for emergency treatment. The medics swarmed around both fallen warriors, working desperately to save their lives. In the arena seats, the Valorant soldiers sat in complete shock. They did not know what to think. They did not know what to feel. Everything they believed about the universe had just been proven wrong. On Earth, the humans were not shocked. They were cheering. They were crying. They were holding each other and screaming with joy. One man had fought the Empress to a standstill. One man had shown that the invincible could be challenged. One man had proven that humanity was not weak, not inferior, not meant to kneel. The spark that Do-Hyun had hoped to light was now a fire, and that fire would never go out. Days passed. Do-Hyun woke up in a medical bay, surrounded by machines that hummed with alien technology. His wounds had been healed. His broken arm had been fixed. He felt weak, but alive. Empress Yeren was sitting beside his bed. He blinked, unsure if he was dreaming. But she was really there, dressed in simple robes instead of her armor, her silver face marked with new scars that would never fully heal. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was soft, without the commanding tone she used in public. "Am I still a prisoner?" Do-Hyun asked. "No." Yeren shook her head. You are a guest, an honored guest. After what happened in the arena, I could not treat you as anything less. Do-yun tried to sit up, but his body was too weak. Yeren reached out and helped him, adjusting the pillows behind his back. Why are you being kind to me? He asked. I tried to kill you. I humiliated you in front of your entire empire. Yeren smiled. It was a strange sight on her alien face, but somehow it looked natural. You did not humiliate me, she said. You taught me something, something I had forgotten in 3,000 years of conquest. You taught me that strength is not the only thing that matters, that courage can come from the smallest and weakest places, that a single person with nothing but a knife and a will to fight can change the course of history. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. My empire has conquered 1,000 worlds because we believed we were superior. We believed that strength gave us the right to rule. But you showed me that there are different kinds of strength. Your people are weak in body, but strong in spirit. You fight when you cannot win. You hope when there is no hope. She turned back to face him. I do not want to destroy a species like that. I want to learn from you. I want to understand you. Do-yun was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been burning in his mind. What happens now? To Earth? To my people? Yeren took a deep breath. I have made a decision. Earth will not be conquered. Your people will be freed. All of them. Every prisoner, every soldier, everyone who was taken. Do-yun stared at her in disbelief. That is not possible. Your empire, your generals, your people would never accept such a thing. They will accept it because I command it, Yeren said, and because you have proven that humans are not a species to be conquered. You are a species to be respected. You are a species to be feared. She stepped closer to his bed, looking down at him with those strange purple eyes. I am offering your people a seat on the Galactic Council, not as subjects, not as slaves, as equals. You will have a voice in the future of the galaxy. You will be treated as partners, not property. Do-yun could not believe what he was hearing. Everything he had fought for, everything he had been willing to die for, was being offered to him. But he had to ask one more question. Why? Why would you give us so much? We are one small planet. We have nothing compared to your empire. Yeren smiled again. This time, it reached her eyes. Because you showed me that I could bleed, and that lesson is worth more than 1,000 planets. She held out her hand, a gesture of peace, a gesture of alliance. Do-yun looked at her hand for a long moment. Then slowly he reached out and took it. On Earth, the announcement came like a thunderclap from the heavens. The Valorans were leaving. The prisoners were being freed. Humanity was being offered a place among the stars. People wept in the streets. They danced in the ruins. They held memorial services for the dead and celebration parties for the living. After months of darkness, hope had returned. In the camps, prisoners walked free for the first time. Ji-hoon and Minji and the brothers Won-jun and Hyunwoo looked up at the sky as the Valoran ships began to depart. He did it, Ji-hoon whispered. The crazy human actually did it. Minji wiped tears from her eyes. He showed them that we do not kneel. Across the galaxy, other conquered species watched the news in stunned silence. If humans could do this, what was possible for them? If one man with a knife could challenge an empire, what could a united galaxy accomplish? The seeds of change had been planted. Rebellions would follow. Revolutions would come. The old order of conquest and submission would slowly crumble, replaced by something new. Something better. Commander Sujin stood at the window of the Crimson Throne, watching Earth grow smaller as the ship pulled away. She thought about the human she had spoken to in the cells, the one who had said he would fight like he had nothing to lose. She understood now what he had meant, and she understood why it had worked. The Valorans had thought they understood the universe. They had thought that strength and power were all that mattered, but the humans had taught them a different lesson. Sometimes the greatest strength is the strength to keep fighting when all hope is lost. Sometimes the greatest power is the power to inspire others. And sometimes the smallest creature in the room is the most dangerous one. Do-yun stood on the observation deck of the Crimson Throne, watching his planet shine blue and green in the distance. Yeren stood beside him. What will you do now? She asked. Do-yun thought about all the people who had died, all the friends he had lost, all the suffering his world had endured. Then he thought about the future, about the chance to rebuild, about the opportunity to take humanity's place among the stars. We will learn, he said. We will grow. We will become stronger, not through conquest, but through cooperation. And we will never forget what we learned in the darkness. He turned to face Yaren. And we will never, ever kneel. Yaren nodded. She understood. The duel was over, but the story was just beginning. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, not through superior technology, not through military might, through the sheer, stubborn, wonderful human refusal to give up, and the galaxy would never be the same again.